Okay, so let's see, what was the first chapter? No, I mean the chapter that was assigned. Because it was, because we didn't review them on the first one, so we're going to be doing both sections. Or was there 3 chapters? I can't remember. That's what I'm trying to remember. 2, right? Whatever was due last Thursday night.
It was 18.
18, yeah. So 18, and then we'll start with 18. That was with cars and roads, because we did 17, right? We went through the problems with that, or not 17, 16 rather, yeah. Did we go over that one in class too? Yeah, we did do that one, okay. So it should just be 18 and. All right, so was it number 3 from this one, or were you talking about 23?
I was talking about 23.
Okay. Has anybody got any questions on cars and roads and congestion? 15 review. All right. On average, the marginal external accident cost of driving is roughly blank per mile driven. For drivers under the influence of alcohol, the marginal external cost is roughly X. And so I think that's somewhere in your book. For the review. What did you guys get for that?
0.061 and then times 7.
0.061 and then 7 times. 0.061 and then 7 times. Did you guys find that in the text? What is it? Page 300.
Right above the graph on the bottom. In that paragraph under the
This one here?
underneath.
Oh, right under here. Yeah, 2007 estimate that the marginal external accident cost is 0.06 and shows the efficiency of the external cost, and then the marginal private cost of driving, and then we get the drunk part is 7 times. Did I just overlook it somehow? Or? Where did we get to the alcohol part? Was that in there? I assume it was.
It's down. The margin is small.
But then they get into the different types of cars.
Up a little bit. The beginning of that.
Yeah, for drivers who consume alcohol before driving, the external cost is roughly 7 times the average external cost. So it gets a little more expensive, inebriated. So, for a problem like this, it would have been good if you're driving. There's the graph of it where we're just showing the externalities. Social cost is higher than the private cost. And then the one with the alcohol would be even higher, right, with the external. Does that work for you, James? Okay. Anybody else on chapter 18?
9 on the apply.
9 apply. Okay, youngsters pay to drive. The demand curve for car travel by the typical young driver, less than 25, has a vertical intercept of $1 and a horizontal intercept of 200 miles per week. And initially, the cost of insurance is a fixed amount per week. The marginal private cost of driving is 20 cents per mile. Suppose insurance companies switch to a VMT. What's a VMT? VMT. Take a stab. Take take a stab. What's the V you figure? We're in the car chapter. Vehicle, miles traveled, VMT. I think it's at the beginning of the section. But it's kind of on how we tax and it was on my PowerPoints. I believe it's vehicle mile tax. I'm trying to remember if the T is actually on VMT, VIS, vehicle. Jeez, it was like
It's travel on page 301, it's in the last paragraph before safety equipment, risk compensation.
Alright, there we go.
It's at the bottom.
Vehicle miles traveled. Okay, so vehicle miles traveled, and then we can set a tax according to vehicle miles traveled, right? If we have a Google Maps or something that tracks your miles, or if you're on the toll road longer, then you pay more of a toll. Okay, so back to our problem here. Suppose insurance companies switch to a vehicle miles traveled equal to the marginal accident cost of young drivers, rounded to the nearest cent. Illustrate the effects of the switch in pricing. Include on your graph the values for the initial and new price and the initial new miles driven. All right, so who's got a picture? Looks like this is a picture one. Jacob, you ready? That's what we need. Yeah, and you guys, you know that you're learning it if you can actually explain it to somebody else. So. Even if you're wrong sometimes, right? It's okay to be wrong.
I added the 20 cents to the original dollar for the mile, and then divided the 200 by the $1.20 per mile to get the equilibrium quantity for total driving at the $1.20.
Okay.
That's kind of
So what was the answers for the answer key?
Price increases from 0.2 to 0.31.
0.2 to 0.31.
that was just on that.
Okay.
Miles decrease from 160 to 138.
160 to 158. So you got something different here.
138.
Huh?
38.
138. So we went from 160 to 138 with miles. And then what'd you say with the price?
It went from 0.2 to 0.31.
So an increase of 11, whatever. Okay. So why did you do what you did there?
I just thought it was worth a shot because I wasn't quite sure how.
Okay. Fair enough. What else did you guys do? You get basically the same thing? Is it constant like this? Why is it constant? Pull off your paper. Let's look at the problem again here. So initially, the cost of insurance is fixed amount per week, and the marginal private cost of driving is constant at 20 cents per mile. Suppose insurance companies switch to a VMT equal to the marginal accident cost of young drivers. So I just want to make sure, is that being reflected? Go ahead and put yours back on. How is that being reflected in yours there?
I just increased it by 20 cents and kept it flat.
So if I'm interpreting your graph right, at 1.66, it's $1.20. But if you drive more to 200, it's still $1.20.
Well, the demand curve.
So it should be a positively sloped line. It's marginal, right?
If it's the private cost. So would it be a positive slope if we need to do that?
Yes.
Each mile you drive, there's some other costs. Let's go back to the wording. What does the first page say? Flip back the text to the, you're gonna have to move it over again. But. All right, so the demand curve for car travel for the typical driver has a vertical intercept of $1 and a horizontal intercept of 200 miles. Now put your paper back on. Did you do that? So that's part of it, right?
I just tried something.
That's fine. No, that's fine. Did you guys, how many people have you had the demand curve down? What did your other paper say? Maybe I should collect everybody's paper.
I mean, I actually think I might have done this right.
Where's yours? You good? Well, I think you guys could have gotten this demand curve. Am I pushing you too hard in this class? Can't remember that. Alright, well that's fair though. At least you got a demand curve. I mean, the author kind of lays it out for you right there. Alright, Jacob, you can grab a seat. I'll work on Kalin's here for a sec. So, it did say a vertical intercept of $1, didn't it? And then it told you a horizontal intercept of how much?
200.
200. How many of you didn't get that? Like that's too hard for you.
It was the 488.
I mean, if you blew it off, let me show your hands that you blew it off. I want to know, because otherwise, I'm not sure you belong in this class if you couldn't follow those directions. But if you blew it off and you glance at it, man, I can live with that. I know opportunity cost. You might have had Netflix to watch or something else, some friends to get to. So, I mean, I don't know if this could be more clear.
It was the 488.
The demand curve for young drivers has a vertical intercept of $1 and a horizontal intercept of 200 miles per week. I think you guys can all handle that. So go ahead and draw it on your papers now. All right, so now we got the demand curve down. Initially, the cost of insurance is fixed as a fixed amount per week, and the marginal private cost of driving is 20 cents per mile. So let's see, the amount of insurance is fixed per week, and the marginal private cost of driving is 20 cents per mile. All right, so Kalin, you've got a unlabeled thing here, relationship that starts here. Why?
I didn't really know what I was doing.
That's fair, but why would it start here? I mean, I think you.
Because if they don't drive it, they don't have.
Yeah.
that
No,
cost.
that's right, right? If they don't drive, they don't have cars, and so then you've got it going up. Why?
Because if they drive the cost,
By how much? 1 mile,
20 cents.
20 cents. 1 mile, 20 cents. 1 mile, 20 cents. It's just the slope, right? So we can kind of get something going on. Even if we don't understand the whole problem, I think you can start to lay out some of the skeletons here. So initially, the cost of insurance is fixed per week, and the amount of private cost of driving is 20 cents per mile. Suppose insurance companies switch to a VMT equal to the marginal accident cost of young drivers, rounded to the nearest cent. Illustrate the effects. What's the marginal accident cost?
0.109.
Okay, so point, and was that from the answer key?
No, you had to go to the book.
Good, Jonathan. Okay, 0.109, and this is, again, cents per mile, right? So 0.01, so that's really 10 cents, right? It's dollar
And then it rounds up because they want the nearest cent.
to the nearest cent. Okay, so yeah. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that if that's 0.1 of a cent, or is it 10 cents?
There's a dollar sign in front of it. So
There's a
it's
dollar
10 cents.
sign, so it's 10 cents. Okay, so this is per mile. All right, and that is for the youth cost, right? So privately, it runs me 20 cents per mile is the private cost. And this was the accident cost, right? Was the victim cost or whatever we call it? VMT, yeah, equal to marginal accident cost. So VMT accident cost. All right. So let's see. So I'm kind of curious here, Kalin. I really appreciate that you did some stuff here. How'd you do it?
So I set the equation of the demand curve equal to the equation of the supply curve.
Okay, so this is a little rise over run action, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't really know what I was trying to do, but I got the 4.8 for the intersection. I don't think that's correct.
I think it is.
Well, I think what's your intercept here is 0, right?
Yeah.
So what you're kind of modeling is that's your slope of the private cost, and this is your the demand. And so how many miles are you going to drive? Solve for M. That looks good to me. That's pretty solid. Did anybody else do that way?
I just did.
You just did. Okay, that's fine. So now we're starting to get somewhere here. So we've got 4.8 miles being driven, and then you've got 0.98. What's that?
The 1 minus 0.005 times.
Okay, so you just plug that answer back into here, which you could also plug it back into here, right? You can do either one since that was your equilibrium, and you come up with the 0.98. All right. So that doesn't take into account any sort of insurance thing, right? How would the fixed amount per week? Initially, the cost of insurance is fixed amount per week. Are we really doing that? So, and the marginal private cost of driving is 20 cents per mile. How would we do a fixed insurance cost? What would happen to this graph the way Kalen's got it here? So I'm going to help your answer out here a little bit, Kalin, if I have your permission. Is that all right? So we've got a marginal cost here of that, and then this was our demand curve, which is our marginal benefit curve. All right. So what would it do? Shift?
It would shift up.
Shift up? Yeah. So if we added a fixed cost, would it shift like I heard a couple people saying up, this.
The line would be
Parallel or not?
Parallel.
Parallel, right? So a shift up, if there was a fixed amount, then that would be some amount up. What would cause to your equilibrium miles? They go down by some amount, right? So if we get it to here, then we would calculate anew. Kalen's equation would do what?
So why wouldn't the line stay at 0 miles?
Because we're adding a fixed cost. Even if you don't drive, I'm working on the don't drive one, there's a fixed cost. So fixed cost means even if you don't drive, you're going to pay some. Is that the way insurance works today, by the way? Yeah. So what would happen over here?
So you're just gonna have like an X or a Y intercept, I guess.
Yeah, there's going to be some amount that's added onto it, right? The fixed cost, so this would be like plus 0.05 or something. And then this would shift up by 0.05. The slope would stay the same, and we could still use the two equations to get the answers. All right, so we were at 160, so I'm kind of wondering, this is with the insurance cost though, so let's see if did I see a hand up before we move on?
Yeah, I was about to ask about.
Okay, yeah, so we're still not quite cracking the nut here on the 0.2 and the 0.31. So now let's go back. Jonathan looked up in the previous chapter. What did you catch? What page that was, Jonathan?
It's on 301, about halfway down.
All right, so 301, about halfway down. For young drivers, the external cost is roughly 0.0109 per mile. So the external cost being when they get into those types of issues. So now, if we go back to our picture here, and we've got external cost. And with yours, Kalin, you didn't have that factored in anywhere, correct?
No.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So now we've got the young driver external cost equal to 109 dollars per mile. Which my pen is kind of pooping out on me here. So external cost. All right, so what's that going to do to this thing? How does that modify things?
That wouldn't shift it parallel, but it would shift it more this way.
Give a tilt to it, maybe? How would you modify Kalin's initial equation?
Just add that onto the slope.
Yeah, so what would we do? We'd add another factor, because now it's going to be a tax, but the tax is VMT. So that's the amount that they're going to be charged. So putting your equation goggles on, what would you do?
You got it to 0.2.
Yeah, just add it to the 0.2. So it'd be 0.2. Let's do it here. 0.2. I gotta switch one out. I don't know if I have another one. All right, here we go. So we got 0.2m, and then what? Plus 0.109m equals 0.309. Or, suspiciously close, rounding to the nearest cent of 31 cents. So that would be 309m, which equals 0.31m. All right, so what's our new m with 0.31 instead of 0.2? 3.18. So something over here, 3.18. If we're doing it in cents, is this 1 cent? How many cents is that? 100. So if we converted it to cents, just to kind of think about it that way, and made this in terms of cents, and then our other slope in terms of cents, we could kind of get a different looking line. So you did 1 over 200, correct, Kalin, to get that? So 1 divided by, so that's in dollars. Of course, 100 divided by 200 is just 0.5, so that'd be another way to do it. It doesn't really matter as long as if you kept the action straight here, but okay, so you get 3.18. 3.18. All right, so what is it? They had 160 miles. What does that end up being if we end up converting this back to to hundreds, does it change, how does that change our scale? I'm just curious, I don't know, I haven't worked this one out, you guys, so we're doing this together if you haven't figured that out. So, our demand equation becomes 100 minus 1/2 times m equals 0.31 m. What does that equal?
$123.
123? 100 divided by 0.81? Okay. And what was it before? If we go back to using this equation equal to 0.2. Now I really feel like I'm making a disaster out of Kalin's notes here, but.
It was 488.
Doesn't this equal 0.7 m equals 100? M equals, what's 100 divided by 0.7?
143.
143. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing where your author got these answers, but I think we're on the right track. Because even if we had a fixed amount, initially the cost of insurance is fixed, that wouldn't help us out too much, so. But now we've got the main thing is we've got the dollars and cents a little bit better lined up with the 143 and the 100. All right, so we could say that this is now at 143. And with the slope being different, is the slope steeper or flatter with the 0.31?
Steeper.
It's steeper, right? So it's over 1 up 0.2 or over 1 up 0.3. So it kind of does this. And then that gives us our 123. All right, any other ones on this chapter? Whoops, glad I didn't tip that right over. Chapter 23? All right, so we get into the crime. And Lawson, you said number 3?
Yeah.
The apply you want to do it? Okay, using the example shown in figure 23.3 as a starting point, suppose that potential victims take measures to protect their property and the loot decreases from 120 down to 50. Illustrate the values associated with the new lottery, including the new value of the certainty equivalent. All right, so 23.3 is this picture. And what happened? Did you get an answer different than answer key?
Yeah.
How many people got an answer different than the answer key? Just 2 of you?
I wasn't sure how
I
the
got
answer key got
lost,
there.
so.
And you got lost, okay. So, what's changed from this picture?
Payoff for the gain.
So the gain of 120 has now become
50.
50. So instead of 120, the gain has become 50. Has anything else changed with the problem?
No.
They increased their protection or something, so
They
it
did.
didn't give you a number.
Yeah, so there wasn't any cost associated with that. Is that what you're getting at? Whether there'd be some number with it?
Yeah, because they said that they got like, what, a security system or something?
So yeah, so maybe it's security, maybe they hired a private security guard. Do we care?
No.
Whose lens are we looking through with this problem? Whose utility? Whose lens? The criminals.
But does that not change your R factor or something, so if you have a higher chance of getting caught?
It was apparently something about just the loot that you would get, not necessarily getting caught. That's a good question. Yeah, I don't think the author was meant to change the probability of getting caught. It's just that maybe you took most of your wealth and put it into Bitcoin. So if they break into your house, you used to have a safe full of cash of 120, and now you only got 50 in cash. The rest is in Bitcoin, nice and safe and sound, right? Something like that. So we'll just protect the loot. All right, so what'd you guys get then for the changes to the problem? We should be able to just channel this through the rest of the problem.
Since the slope of the gain is 3, you have a utility of 150. Then you do the utilities.
Now hold on, when you said this, you mean the slope of the utility line here, right?
Yeah.
You put $50.
So the gain is actually down here now,
Yeah.
and so this ends up being 150 because the slope was 3, right? So now I've got utility with 50 gives me 150. That's without getting caught, right? So that's, I can't remember how we worded that, but the utility with gaining the loot, I guess. Okay, and then what do we do? Is this any different?
No.
No.
No. So all we've done is we've changed the loot to on the positive side to 50. All right, so then that means what's our expected utility? 0. So at 150, the expected value of the utility, and that, why is it 0?
Is it because of the 150 on the bottom, like,
Yeah,
kind of
it's
cancels it out?
150 plus the negative 150.
So you just add them, average them out?
If we use the formula like the 150 times the half of the probability plus the minus 150 times the half of the probability that equals out to 0.
Is that like
Well, that's
a net gain
assuming
or
that
net
it's
loss
a
there?
50-50 chance.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
But if you use the.
Why would you assume a 50-50 chance?
It'd be a 3.
Because they.
But there's other values there.
Well, but
Well,
they
it's,
did it's 3 bits.
Yeah, they did a 3
Is
fifths
that
and
what the
2
3
fifths.
bits is? Okay.
Yeah, so there's nothing to change the probability, which is kind of what Jonathan was bringing up originally. If we didn't change the technology, remember when we changed the probability of getting caught, we might have added police officers, right? Or something like that, or we added equipment that might increase the probability of getting caught. The only technology change we did here was the amount of the gain was changed. So if that's the case, what is the expected utility?
I got 90 and 60.
What's the formula, Carlos?
3 fifths
Yep, 3/5 is the higher probability event of getting how much?
times 150.
Times 150 is the utility from getting 50 units of loot, right?
Yeah,
Or $50.
that's gaining.
Plus,
2 fifths times negative 150.
all right, now we're in business. And so what is the expected utility?
90
90.
minus 60.
What's the minus for? Oh, you're doing the full thing here. 90 minus
60.
60, okay, gotcha. So we get 30 units of expected utility now, right? So 30 units of expected utility.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we're looking for, going back to the problems, always good to double check. I assume we're looking for certainty equivalent, right?
Yep. Certainty equivalent and.
So illustrate the values associated with the new lottery, including the new value of the certainty equivalent.
Let's go.
So what's the certainty equivalent?
10.
10. Sounds like it might be right. How do we do that? Well, now we're at a new expected utility of 30. And we need to go back to the utility trade-off here to find the certainty equivalent. And so if it's 30, the slope here is 3, the intercept is 0, so that's going to bring you down to 10. So that implies a certainty equivalent of 10. Does that match the answer key?
No.
Okay, what does the answer say?
0 for both.
Wait, how'd you get 10 real quick?
The slope is 3, so.
The expected utility was 30.
Divide by 3.
And I'm guessing what the author did, and I think it was a mistake, the way they got it worded, since we're starting with this utility, is they went to that 50-50. Remember when we, through the lecture, we switched it to 50-50? With 50-50 odds, then you guys are right, it would be 0 to get that. Does that make sense? So, could a problem possibly state that two things happen? The loot goes down and we add officers dropping it to a 50-50 proposition. Sure. And that would be the right answer if that was what was done. But I think they messed up on that one. I don't think that's what they intended.
I'm assuming the author's just using the numbers from number 1 because it had to happen.
Yeah, that's like it.
Oh, from number 1 on the problems?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that could be. So they were kind of building it up.
That's what we did. That's what I did too.
That's fine, yeah. I mean, it's fine if they would have been more clear. I would have said something like using, building on number 1 or something like that. Yeah, if you build on number 1 and go to number 3, then that would work. So I think this was good to work through anyway, so. Okay. Other ones on chapter 23. 7, Jameson has a second. This is in the apply.
Yeah.
Number 7, education and crime. Consider a city with 20 workers and 2 occupations, robber and electrician. For each occupation, the payoff curve, the payoff as a function of the number of workers, has a slope of 2 utils per worker. In the initial equilibrium, there are 10 and 10, and payoffs of 20. Suppose the government subsidizes community college programs, free education for everyone, and thus increases the productivity of electricians, shifting the payoff curve up by 12 utils. Illustrate the new equilibrium, including the values for the number of electricians and the number of robbers. All right, so who's got themselves a pretty little picture to show the class, or maybe it's a formula or something else? Carlos? All right, come on up. Ooh, we got graphing paper. That is official.
So basically, what's the problem say?
We go up from
12 units, right?
yeah, the community college education gives you an extra 12. So, and we start at 10 and 10. So you maybe start where you're
So
starting.
what I understand is in here 10, 20, and 10.
Uh-huh.
20 and 10. And then you go up 12, 32.
Okay. So they're at 32.
So then they're gonna start regrading. So we did the same that we did in their chapter. I don't remember which one. So the slope is -2 or
The slope was -2 for each one, right?
yeah. So
Yeah, if you guys don't have this down, his is looking pretty sharp. I'd start copying down Carlos's answer here.
So they, as soon as one leave and they get one,
Yeah.
it's +2, -2, till 26, and 26,
Yep.
where it's 7 and 13.
Okay, so the main thing is we have that substitution across space, right? So now these guys, the robbers, are saying, oh man, college education looks great. Look at how happy those folks are over there. And so then they leave robbering and they get that 2-unit trade-off, right? So you kept going with 2 units, but of course that creates competition over here and changes the situation where we were at 32, and then they're going to meet back in the middle, and they equalize at 7
And 13.
7 and 13.
I'm confused because with the slope of -2, if you go at a slope of -2, once you get like back to the 20, it'd be at 12, not 13. Or you'd be at 14. Right, or, yeah, 14 is -2. Because that's where I got confused at.
So you're saying that the slopes didn't quite line up, and we can go one for one person, and yeah,
Well,
you
if
said
go
you
over
had
to his-
7?
Well, I'm saying if you go over to the
Yeah.
one on the right where he goes up to 32, where it increases, and you go down 2 slopes for each one,
Yeah.
that'll put you at 14 instead of 13. Yeah, because it'll 20 minus 6 is 6 at a slope of -2.
Well, I was wondering, it didn't seem like they were quite, you had 3, oh, I guess you had 3 and 3, right? Is that what you said, 13? So basically, they lose 3 and you gain, and they gain 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so what Bryce is bringing up is if we drop 3, and we're going up 2, 4, 6, so we're up at 26, does this come down to 26? So down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1 more. It looks like it works for me.
Yeah.
I must have been
And you could set up equations to do this too. I mean, it's we're equalizing the utility, and so the equilibrium then is that they're back to both being a little happier from education. We have happier robbers. That's kind of the counterintuitive result is we have happier robbers, right? They used to be at 20 units of satisfaction, and now they're a little happier at 26. Less competition.
It makes sense now.
Okay. All right, good job. Any other ones on this? Okie doke. McKenna, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I saw you don't have your video on, so I can't see a thumbs up or anything. Do you have a video available, or?
It says that it's on, but it's not working. So
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, you can feel free to play around with the settings, but no big deal. Do you have any other questions on this chapter or the previous? I forgot to check with you on the
No,
previous.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Done? All right, let's talk about local public goods. So remember, we are done with Triumph. I'm going to get a start on this now, and we can talk about the 2 chapters in Triumph we haven't talked about. But I'm going to let you guys finish the book on your own if you choose to do so. We got plenty of stuff to keep you busy here. So this is the final chapter we're going to be covering, and it's on local public goods. And then this homework will be due, I think I put Wednesday night, right? So that we can then review it on Thursday, and then we'll also do a general review for the final. So the final exam is in class on Friday.
Yes, Tuesday before class.
Oh, my bad. Okay, well, maybe we'll change it. But, so I put Tuesday, yeah, I think I was trying to be aggressive to see if we could, Tuesday night? No, Tuesday before class, right?
Wait, what?
I saw Thursday.
Well, whatever it is, I don't think I'm gonna,
It says Tuesday at 11:30 a.m.
Yeah, Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. I was gonna have you do it before class so we could review the problems tomorrow. But that would give us more of Thursday to review all the problems, is what I was thinking when I put that. So let's see how far we get today. And it might be good to just do it while it's fresh and be done with it, right?
It's the
Carlos?
exam covering chapter 20?
What?
The exam is covering
Yes,
chapter
the exam
20?
will cover chapter 20 also. Yep. It's a fairly minor extensions of stuff we've done already. Median voter, which you've done median stuff already, so. All right, what's the role of local government in the federal system? Why does working voting with generate inefficient outcomes? Okay, so we've seen this already before in different ways, that voting doesn't always get us an efficient outcome. Why? What are some things that come to mind with the way public goods go that we don't get efficient outcomes? Who gets screwed in a democracy? Everybody talks about, oh, everybody's got to have democracy. We all have a vote, man. We all just kind of get together and it's like 51% or better, that wins, and that's awesome, dude. We all have a voice. No, you don't. You get screwed sometimes. Why?
The other 49%?
Yeah, the other 49%. I mean, there's a big potential inefficiencies created with that, that not getting the proper level of the public good. So there's all kinds of potential problems and inefficiencies that we'll see. So we're going to explore that in a little bit more detail in this chapter of there might be ways to make it more efficient, but some of those ways might be difficult to do depending on the circumstances. So this first question here, the role of the local government in the federal system versus the federal system, what is the idea of federalism in the United States? Which this chapter doesn't really cover too much. This is kind of a little Russ McCullough special, but James.
It goes local, then state, and federal.
Who has the most, I guess, power to force rules on you? The local or the federal? The local technically has the most. Why? Because the federal government has its set of rules that should be relatively small because they have to apply to people from California to New York, Minnesota to Texas, right? Are there differences in those states? Of course, right? And so the idea is, let's agree to some basic principles of, maybe you can't own people. There's a good one to start off with, right? We don't think that's a good idea. And you can't do this and you can't do that. But other than that, do whatever the heck you want, right? So some really broad, overarching, reaching rules that reasonable people agree should apply to everyone across the whole nation, whether you're in California, New York, Minnesota, or Texas. Then we'll allow the states to add other restrictions on top of what the federal did. So the law list, the list of rules, gets bigger as we move down because the states can add on to what was at the federal level. And then finally we get down to Ottawa, Kansas. That's a member of Kansas, which is a member of the United States. And they can even add on more rules than what the state does. That's the idea of federalism. And really, the theory of federalism is more important than that even, that we want to push down those rules as far as possible to the local level. Why? Why does that help the idea of freedom? Awesome?
The people that actually are the laws apply to, it's going to reach that people, not just people like the 50% of the country.
Okay, I
Like
mean, the way you worded that though, at the federal level, that applies to everybody, so the rules reach them from the federal level. Let me go to Bryce.
With more of your local laws, it's easier to vote with your feet. So if you don't like how it is in one place, you
Yeah.
don't have as far to move.
Okay, so that's the big thing, is that let's recognize that we're all different and we have different preferences. And we might not all agree that we're gonna get screwed on the 49% because I don't want to build a new water park or add a school, a brand new school to our school system where my property taxes are gonna go up by $1,000 per year. I don't want that, right? So there could be the federal government driving that, and then how do you avoid those taxes? You're free to leave the country. All right, is that very realistic for a lot of people? No. Is it realistic for the rich, by the way? Yeah, they do it all the time. So it's really dumb when we start to have too punitive of taxes for the rich, because the rich always figure out a way to stay rich. The answer is not to tax the rich. By the way, I agree in taxing the rich proportionally more than the poor. I'm not trying to go that direction, because I believe in that. But if you say, oh, $10 million, that's enough. Anything you earn over that, we get 90% of. Well, okay, I'll leave the country. Even though I'm not really leaving the country, I'm just going to have a house in another country, and then I'm going to come back here all the time to party and use up all your resources, right? So the rich are always going to find a way to avoid it, so we got to be very careful when we have the tax the rich mentality, because the rich have the resources to figure out ways around that, likely. So, but in general, I'm okay with a progressive tax to hitting that. So with the federal system then, as Bryce said, this is what this chapter is going to be about. There's an economist named Thibault. The Thibault hypothesis is that you can vote with your feet. If you don't like the way Ottawa does their property taxes and you do like the way Olathe does their property taxes, move. Are you going to be consuming a different bundle of local public goods? Absolutely. Are the school systems better in Olathe? Yeah, in terms of some attributes, pretty much all attributes, I hate to say. Student outcomes, the engineering, the computers, the playground equipment, the football team. I mean, darn near every aspect. They can afford to hire more teachers. The classroom sizes might even be smaller. I don't know that. I mean, I know this is being recorded, but I don't know that with certainty. But on a lot of metrics, if we had a list of 20 things, I bet there's a good chance Olathe is higher in those things than Ottawa. Does that make Ottawa a bad school where you can't get a good education? Absolutely not. My son's an engineer right now, graduated from Ottawa High School, and was served very well with the Ottawa High School education. But the point is, people can choose to move to Olathe. If they do that, though, they're going to be paying more. That stuff costs more. Now, not in all cases. If there's a higher population, they might be able to spread those taxes out over more people, too. But then we get into congestion costs and all these other things that we've been talking about in this class, right? So my point with the whole thing is that what ultimately gets created in each community is a bundle of goods, a bundle of public goods, if you want to think about it that way. What's the police level like? What's the education level like? What's this level like, right? So by buying a house in Ottawa, you're effectively buying a bundle of public goods, of local public goods. And you could go buy a different bundle. That's the beauty of federalism, is that if we have separate people, some people want the ability to put junk cars in their front yard. Can you do that here in Ottawa? Can you have a junked car that hasn't moved for 3 months in your front yard in Ottawa? No, it's against city code. People do it once in a while, but maybe because their neighbors haven't called in the police, but you technically can't do that. Now, if you go over to some cities, do you see that a lot? Yeah, they don't have that same law. So when you buy a house in Ottawa, you're buying a certain set of rules and regulations and obligations, and that bundle is different in different municipalities. And so by having the Federalist System where we push down those abilities to do that, and we have the ability to vote with our feet and move, we have mobility, we get greater efficiency. You might not mind living in a neighborhood with junk cars in the front yard. It might not bother you. Like, truly, it doesn't bother you. Like, you're even more comfortable. Maybe you grew up in the backwoods of Tennessee, and that's the way everybody lived. So when you come to a city in Kansas, you might even be looking for properties where they allowed to do that, because it makes you feel at home, right? I don't know what your preferences are. The beauty of the Federalist System is that with mobility, you're going to choose, not the government choosing for you, right? The government chooses for you when it starts at a federal level, and then everybody has to follow the same rules. Could the federal government have a rule that says no junk cars in the front yard? Could the federal government have that rule? Yeah, they're the government. If you break it, they put you in jail, or they charge you fines and taxes, and you can't bankrupt yourself out of it. That's the way the government works. But that's not the way we choose to operate in the land of freedom, if that's what we believe. We're going to try our best to set up a system with individual property rights, right? So our belief in a capitalist system is that we'll try to push down ownership and property and freedom to the lowest level, which resides with the individual. All right, well, that was a mouthful. I didn't mean to get on that big of a soapbox, but that was kind of fun. Questions or comments? All right, so here's what some of the local government stuff breaks down here in the opening parts of this chapter. So we've got different ways that local governments are formed that you guys might not be familiar with. You've got the city government, you got maybe county government, and then you've got like school districts. Can school districts go across city boundaries? They do in the big city, right? So school districts, the territory, the governing body of the school district can actually go over city boundaries. So it can sometimes get confusing with some of the local governments, and then part of what we'll talk about in this chapter is, well, how does that impact your funding if there's externalities or something? All right, so per capita spending by local governments. So local governments in general, where are we spending the most money on locally? Education. Not roads and bridges. Little bit of public assistance, right? So helping some people out that are in need. Fire protection, so here's our police and fire combined together is about a third of what we're spending on education. So it kind of gives you a little breakdown of where money's being spent.
Wouldn't have been other, not education?
What's that?
Wouldn't have been other, not education? Education was only 1,700, other was 2,100.
For over here?
Yeah, wouldn't have been other is where we spent the majority of our money, not education.
Well, good point, yeah, but other is actually just so many line items that they don't make up the majority.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They wouldn't overwhelm this. So this might have a list of 100 categories. And so for the purposes of just kind of giving you a snapshot, any one of those are so small, they're actually less than these. Does that make sense? Okay. So here, another total per capita. This is from a different year, but it gives a little bit more of the other category, actually, I think, Andrew. So they just added more levels on here. Just to give you a kind of a snapshot of what does a city buy with my tax dollars, right? And then it gives you an idea of the proportions of where it's spending money. Okay, so what is the advantages of this collective action problem? So we might call this a collective action problem. There might be externalities, scale economies, diversity of demand. So first of all, what's diversity of demand?
Not everybody wants the same thing.
Not everybody wants the same thing. Good. So that's what we already discussed, right? Everybody's different. So we have a diversity of demand. Externalities. Who wants to give me an externality definition off the top of their head?
Pollution?
Pollution is not in, well, it's an example, but I was looking for a definition.
Just anything that affects like people not involved, the two parties involved.
Okay, so we got the two parties thing, Bryce?
Or I was just gonna say, a benefit or something negative that happens to a third party not involved in the.
Good. That's kind of the working definition that I think we had earlier in this course, but also in other courses. So a cost or benefit, this is the part that gets students hung up though, that doesn't belong to two people who made a deal with each other, right? That's the third party. So an externality is, here's the deal, there's a buyer, there's a seller, they've negotiated a price. All of the costs and benefits of that transaction have been internalized by the buyer and seller through the price, right? So you buy a house and the house floods in the basement. Normally the house would be $150,000, but it's going to be $20,000 to repair the flooding basement. Then they just say, oh, I'll take $130. Okay, you fix the basement, $130, right? All of a sudden the price internalizes all the problems with the property. So those problems get internalized in the negotiated price. So what's an externality? Well, as soon as something with that transaction causes pollution or causes some other thing happening to third parties, that's the externality. If it's a rock and roll band that buys the house, yes, it floods in the morning, but worse yet is 8 a.m. every day, the rock band has their amps cranked and they're playing crazy loud music, and that's disturbing the neighborhood. That's the externality. Scale economies, or economies of scale. What's happening with that one? Let's get somebody besides Lawson or Bryce. Carlos, yes, you messed up with the pollution earlier, so you have a chance to redeem yourself.
You know that as you increase the quantity, you
Yep.
reduce the cost?
Yeah, what kind of cost? I want to be careful with that one.
The average.
Average, good. I want more.
Run cost.
Long run, that's the one I was looking for. So long run cost go up. So we're not talking about like a short-term thing, but the larger the business is, the less we can do. So those are the three things that make us think, well, maybe we could work together in a government format to do that. Okay, so can anybody give me an example of something that would spill over outside the municipality? So we decide to do something with our school district or our city, and it spills over. The benefits spill over to the neighboring city or town, perhaps. Right?
Would be like a really good educational program that turns out really high or really productive people, but then they move into that other municipality, so they're seeing more of the benefits than the.
Okay, I could probably buy that with your last, you saved yourself at the end there with them moving to someplace else after they graduate. Okay, other examples? We could probably think of a few different ones here. Jonathan? I'm gonna go Jonathan.
So what if your school system's so good that it steals families from that other city? They just move over to your city to go to school.
Yeah, so the migration of people is part of the deal, I think, depending on how you characterize it. I kind of want to flow with that, but I want it to be people staying put, that they're the third party. Because I think once they move to the town, now they're paying taxes that are helping support that thing. So it is more internalized rather than an externality. Yeah, Aaron?
Say like a neighboring town builds like a Walmart,
Okay.
and then the other grocery store from that other town, people go to Walmart and sit there, so that kind of be something like that.
I think we still have something transactional to where Walmart doesn't care who they sell to. And so that the loss to the city is just kind of the market for competition, and then they'll need to beef up theirs. Yeah, John? No?
What if we built like a power plant and the pollution flew over to the city?
Yeah, that would be a good one. Yeah, or the poop plant where we process poop is right on the edge of town, and the smells go. The wind is normally a north wind, and so we conveniently located it on the south side of town so that it blows to the neighboring town. Yeah, I like that one. So maybe a swimming pool or a water complex or an auditorium or something that is used at the school. There could be some different things like that could. We did our tax dollars to build this awesome aquarium complex, and yes, we charge $20. Maybe $10, probably a little too high for a city thing, but let's say $10 admission. But really, it's a $20 million water complex, right? Is the $10 really funding the full thing? Would a business have done that? No. So if they use your tax dollars to build the water complex, and it's basically barely funding itself at $10, and now the neighboring town can come use that, they're getting an external benefit of you funding that. right? So there's an external effect. There might even be a user fee, but it's not the user fee that would normally be associated with a water park. Like a for-profit water park, as you guys have probably been to, those tickets are running, what, $60, $70 to $100 to get into that. So, okay. So do we actually see this out in the real world? Scale economies or production costs. So give this one a read. So, somebody want to put into words what's going on with this one? I think is kind of interesting. So they looked at the studies, they said local public goods, police, fire, schools, say that, scale economies are kind of exhausted when we get up to 100,000. How would you interpret that? So let's get somebody else in here. Jameson.
They put so much money into like police or like the fire department, they don't really have that much money for the schools.
No, it wouldn't be them necessarily running out of schools because we could just raise taxes. So it's good to be kind of thinking they might be making choices like that, but they also could raise the taxes to keep the level of schooling constant. So it wouldn't have to be some sort of substitution. Andrew?
Is it that they don't want to? What it means to me is that like they want to have the kind of like middle range of how much they want to pay for these services. That way they can maximize spending somewhere else. How you have like volunteer firefighters, like where I'm from, Derby is a full-time fire department, and then Mulvane is a volunteer.
Yeah.
So by the time Mulvane gets moving, Derby's already there, somewhere in Mulvane.
Okay.
So just how it makes sense to me is that they're going to try and find the median amount they can spend on those kind of resources before.
So you're kind of interacting a little bit with supply and demand, with the sizes and the appropriate size. So with scale economies, let's walk through what Carlos said. What does that picture look like? Long run average cost is doing this. Okay. So long run average cost looks like this. And so what happens at about 100,000 is that the scale economies kind of disappear. If this goes flat right here at 100,000, and now we'd be thinking about population rather than quantity, but it would still be the average cost of police, fire, and schools at this population. So now look at that graph and kind of think about what scale economies means.
With diseconomies of scale, it would start increasing.
Diseconomies would turn up. So we're not talking about that, although that could happen.
So
I think we could.
That's not what it's getting at. Is you hit diseconomies at 100,000.
Just that they're exhausted, which means it flattens. So here's 100. So let's go ahead and put $5,000 of spending per capita or something, and then what happens here with our average cost if we have 120,000? The average cost is still 5,000. What if we get up to 160,000 people? Well, on average, it's still 5,000 on average to put up police, fire, and protection in schools. Okay, so that's what we mean by economies of scale being exhausted. There's still going to be costs, but it just doesn't make. Are you getting extra benefit by being bigger? Is the point here with economies of scale? No. Did you get it here? Well, yeah. At 50,000 population, we had $7,000 per household or per person of spending. But now that we're at 100,000, we can cut that down to 5. Where do those savings come from?
Because everybody's closer together.
Okay, people are closer together. So are you talking about like with police, how quickly you can get to a problem or an issue. Maybe it's a fire or something. Could be that, yeah. Aaron?
Is it that when you get more people in your city, that your savings go down? Because don't each one of those things get funded through taxes? So
Yes, but what do you mean by the savings?
Well, like, you said that it was saved 7,000 instead of 5,000, there's only 50.
Well, this was so the average cost of providing police, fire, and protection was $7,000 when we had a population of 50,000 people, but it dropped. If we doubled the population, we had some economies of scale such that each person on average was only spending $5,000, which would mean translate into that's what we have to tax, right? So it kind of be tax per person. I mean, that's the cost of running it. We're not trying to run a business, so what the average cost is what the taxes would be approximately.
So basically it's getting cheaper for people.
It's getting cheaper for the people in that city, but that runs out. So I'm kind of trying to push you on why would it run out, Bryce?
Because it's all your like overhead costs for like a police station and things like that.
So how many chiefs of police do we have in the city? 1. So even if the city grows from 100,000 to 120,000, how many chiefs of police do we have? None. We don't add one. We still keep 1, right? So that's what Bryce is on the right track there. We're thinking about the other overhead, the organizational structure. As we go from 100 to 120, might we need another police officer? Yes. Might we need another police car? Yes, right? So there's still going to be cost going on, but those additional costs are going to be linear in terms of what they're adding on. We just have that many more police cars, that many more police officers, but we still have the management structure. Now, to kind of get back to Bryce's other comment on diseconomies of scale, could the police department get so big that we start to have some management issues? That one police chief could do pretty good work with 100,000, but if he made it 300,000, does he have a lot of extra headaches, middle management, maybe sergeants that are in charge of the west side and I've got the north side? You know, does the Los Angeles Police Department have problems? I don't know all of the problems, but historically, yeah, LAPD has had some problems. LA is the second largest municipality in the United States, right? Second to New York City. So that could be this diseconomies of scale where because of management constraints, taxpayers ended up paying a little bit more on average when we got too big. But otherwise, we could make it work out to there. All right, what about this intergovernmental contracts business? What do you think's going on there to join forces and exploit scale economies? What do you think there? Take a stab, Jacob. Yeah, that's right. So 2 municipalities. So let's say there's economies of scale, and we've got 2. I don't know what that's a picture of, but it's apparently city councils. You said Lenexa and that was kind of a butt or something there. Lenexa and what'd you say? Olathe. Okay, so we got Olathe and Lenexa, 2 cities, and this has 50,000 people and this has 50,000 people. Could we join forces to do fire and police together? So each one of these cities was at 7,000 operating alone, but they could come to an agreement to jointly provide some of these services to take advantage of economies of scale. So now we have one police chief, back to the overhead idea, that is now covering a territory of 100,000 people, and that could potentially bring down costs. So there we're finding some economies of scale through joining forces with somebody else.
Okay, so by them doing that, does it raise the 14,000? So how would that look?
Well, this is all average. So each one operating independently has 7,000.
Yeah.
But now when we join forces, it's like we have a town of 100.
Oh.
And because a population of 100, the economies of scale allows the average person to pay 5. All right, we'll pick up there tomorrow. So yeah, we didn't get through all this, so we'll hold off till Wednesday night on the last chapter 20 homework.